We're in a hotel room. There we go. So, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm not sure who will be here this morning because I'm not sure I've had time to particularly let people know where we are. But we are in Belonging in Business, and I am currently in Exeter. Now, we in Devon, we are live on LinkedIn and on Facebook and on Twitter and on Twitch and on X, or Twitter, that is X, get it right, MJ, and on StreamYard. So if you're not here actually live on LinkedIn, then you'll be somewhere else. If you don't know about where we are, or you've got friends that don't know about where we are, share this space. You can share it if you'd like to. There's a share button at the bottom. It says share, and if you share that on your profile, people will see that you were here. And usually people kind of get hanging around by 5 past, although they like a link, and I've not been sending links, so I've not sent a link out. We'll see who turns up. It'll be quite interesting. So if you know anyone, pop in a link. Oh, there we are. I think Philippa is going to be able to come up. Or was that follow? It's up to you. If you want to come up, Philippa, you are absolutely welcome to speak with me. It's great to see everybody here, and we are already on the 27th of January. Now, the reason I'm a little bit discombobulated is because I am in Exeter. I didn't want to not do this. I'm wondering if I could actually send this to somebody. Let me just do a copy of this, because there were some people said they wanted to come, and my guess is that they don't know how to get here. So I'm going to see if I can do two things at once. It'll be wild. I don't know whether have I thrown myself out. I can't remember whether I threw myself out. I maybe did. We shall probably learn that we need to share. I don't know whether you can still hear me when I go and do something else on this phone. So it'd be quite interesting if we don't. Anyway, I'm going to get on with it, because it doesn't matter whether there's one person or 100 people here. It could be that the app is having a glitch. If you can pop that onto your LinkedIn, that would be really helpful. So I'm going to talk about who we're serving this morning, and there's lots of reasons why I'm talking about that. But one of them is that I am here talking to a new user group, and we had Louis here, our cameraman. He's actually it was Pete Cohen's cameraman, and I borrowed him. But Louis was here yesterday recording what happened, and we had a really powerful conversation with some really interesting people. And the question that we asked ourselves for the whole of the event was, who are we serving? Because they wanted to know who we serve. So I'm going to share with you today pretty much a rundown of what I shared yesterday. I'm just going to make sure that this is saved on my desktop so I can get it. It's in there. We are. I'm just going to make sure I've done it and it's in there, and then I can just show it. Because for those that aren't watching on everywhere else, I'm showing this on Good Morning, Julene. We are screen layout. Let me see if I can present this PowerPoint presentation at the same time. It could just be a useful thing. See if it works. Let's have a look. That's the one I've asked for. Let's see if it works. You never know. There we are. That's not the one, she says. Let me just delete that and try again. The one I downloaded was not that. No. Let's have a look. From my computer. It's good to see you. Good morning, Lou. We're only at 4 minutes past. People don't usually turn up until 5 past, right? So we have just woken up. I didn't share the link, so well done for finding it. Maybe I'm just testing people. So I'm in Exeter. I am just uploading this PowerPoint presentation that I delivered yesterday. So we are down in Exeter. For those that are joining us, we're down in Exeter, Devon. I believe that's near or in the same place as. I'm not sure. My geography is never good, and I think I've worked out why now. Yeah, so I'm down here delivering to a group of houses who run supported living. And supported living, I think, is a very, very difficult. They don't call themselves supported living, actually. They just call themselves houses with individuals that they support. It's absolutely right. Supported living, the idea of being person-centered, all of those things are becoming quite lip service and they're throwaway, and it's very difficult, particularly when I feel that in order to provide services adequately and effectively, not even just adequately, but effectively, we need to be able to see between the lines. We need to be able to see between those lines. So we came down to Devon to deliver. Oh, hang on a minute. Well, there you go. Well done, Louise. All the things that we need to do. So we started at 8 o'clock, and by 5 past, we worked out that I'm a noodle. However, what we did manage to do, good morning, Julie. Good morning. What we did manage to do was set everything up on StreamYard and get our PowerPoint presentation. So we are tardily 5 minutes late. So good morning and thank you for allowing me to be 5 minutes late and for telling me you couldn't bloody hear me. How ridiculous is that? And it pretty much boils down this weekend for me as I managed to just about do everything and then forget the one thing that's very important, like I should be able to be heard. And the fact that I'm laughing about that just means that I am processing all of the shame I feel about who and what and how I am. But before we do, let's just talk about my shame. Now, before we do, I just want to say that welcome to Belonging in Business. We are in Belonging in Business, and it's the 27th of January, 2024. I nearly said 5, as if the year's already done. Maybe I'm future casting a little. But Who Are We Serving is the title of today. And it's moved on really from Monday because I wanted to present who accessibility partners are and why I also champion inclusion. And I mean inclusion as an organisation, and I also mean it as a wider remit. Why am I doing this and who am I serving? So what's the purpose of me being here? Well, you can say that if you're on any other platform, you'll be able to see that that accessibility and partners and inclusion work together, and there's a reason for that. So I just think that we're better together, and I've even uploaded the wrong slides show again, but it's the same thing. Accessibility Partners began a couple of years ago because I had experience of the Access to Work programme, and I'd experienced it for myself, and I'd also experienced it for my employees. I found it difficult to navigate. I found it difficult and long and drawn out. And actually, if my employees hadn't already been employed and I wasn't already bringing and providing the reasonable adjustments that were needed to be provided anyway, given that Access to Work weren't there, then my employees wouldn't have had a job. And they certainly wouldn't have kept their job. And they certainly couldn't have continued their job emotionally and socially and psychologically and physically unless we'd done that. And that included putting in a lift at my own cost, because actually the entrance and the exit to a building is not the employee, it's not Access to Work's responsibility. It's the employer's responsibility or the landlord's responsibility. So even if I employ a disabled person, if I don't already have that entrance and exit, then I have to pay for it myself. Now that sounds logical, right? That if you've got a public-facing service, you should be providing public-facing opportunities, i.e. for everybody. But the reality is that many, many, many buildings, in fact 83% of buildings, are not accessible. So 17% of the housing stock is accessible to me. And I'm Mandy Jane, for those that haven't met me before. MJ, people refer to me as. It's less of a gobful. Mandy Jane, 3 syllables, not good. I'm going to try and keep this to an hour, but I've found myself to be fairly verbose recently, a little bit talkative, because I think I'm finally releasing myself from my shame. However, the first time around in business, I was still ashamed. I met somebody yesterday who I feel also perhaps is in that position where they have tried and aspired and achieved at quite heady heights early in their life, and then they decided to wash their hands of the whole affair because it just didn't seem fair. The whole affair, there we go, just didn't seem right. But then if you have a goal, a serving, a people, a purpose greater than you, And I've always had that. I knew who God was before I knew his name. And I knew who God was before anybody showed me a church. If your purpose, and I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. If your purpose is bigger than you, it doesn't matter how many times you give up. It doesn't matter how many times you lie down in the ring. It doesn't matter how many times you get battered. Because eventually from somewhere, something urges you forward. I don't know yet what that is, except it has to be my purpose, because that's the only thing I had left. So the first time around, I delivered student services. I'm a SENDCO and a LENCO, a special specific educational needs coordinator, a SENDCO of disability services and learning difficulty services. And learning difficulty services, so physical, psychiatric, psychological, emotional services. So we serve people. Who do you serve? Because if I have a business and it doesn't serve people, then it doesn't serve, in my humble opinion. If it doesn't serve everybody, then it's not a business, is it? It's a personal affair that I've created to serve some of my friends or some of the people I like. It's not a public-facing service. And what is the difference between a public service and a private service? Well, I think those boundaries are blurring. In that Accessibility Partners is a private, for-profit, limited company. It's not limited by guarantee. It's not a CIC, and it is a company. And it's that purposefully. Inclusion, however, is a company limited by guarantee, and its directors do not receive profit or money, not pay, for that service. Now, I believe that a CIC is probably a great model if it was treated properly, but it rarely is. So currently, we have the model that I designed 20 years ago, which is that I believe that for-profit entities should do good, and they should do good transparently and out loud, and in terms of showing how much money is put into their charitable entity. That's what I believe. And so that's how we're set up. Accessibility Partners has come from a long period of learning, mainly my whole life, but certainly the 15 years or so that I was in business. I think we incorporated in 2003 and I died in 2019. There, yeah, 16 years. So 16 years of learning, 16 years of starting off by earning. I charged for an autistic child, 14-year-old, whose father had said to me, I was teaching him in an IT centre, would I be able to support him at home because school otherwise wasn't working? Been thrown out of private school, he'd been thrown out of public school, he didn't have a tutor at home, nobody could handle it. Could I help him at home? And I said, look, to come to the middle of nowhere, which is where they lived, I have to give you have to pay me £20 an hour. Now, the college at that time was paying me £23 an hour. I have a couple of masters, one in special educational needs, one in online and distance learning. I've got my PGCE, I'm a teacher. My first degree was IT and computing, and I'm a trained psychotherapist. Not then, I wasn't. And I'm further training as a social worker. And I'm not doing as great as I could, I'll be honest. And I'll explain why in a minute. So it's 16 years of learning about who I was serving and why I was serving them. And I realized that I was serving myself. All right, that sounds very selfish, doesn't it? Who am I serving? I'm serving myself. How am I serving myself? Well, Accessibility Partners provide now a one-stop shop for accessibility and inclusion through access to work. Why? Because it wasn't there. In spite of the fact that I had staff that went through that program imperatively, because most of my staff were disabled, the access to work process isn't doable unless you've got some money to do it with. That's the truth. The reason that we were able to provide access to work originally for our employees, and therefore for me to employ disabled people, was because I had the money to do that. Put the lift in, get the egress, get the entrance and the egress to the building. All of those things that need to happen as a result of employing disabled people. Now, I couldn't do that until I made some money. And I couldn't do that until I'd done some work. And I couldn't do that until I'd met my own needs. But that's not really what the Access to Work programme suggests it does. Just excuse me while I take a drink. My amazing colleague has brought some breakfast. Breakfast doesn't open till 7:30. You wouldn't believe it when you're up half the day, already. So yeah. So who do we serve? Well, who do I serve? I serve the 1 in 5, 26.4% of people. I'm sure that's risen already, or about a quarter of people have disabilities, and some of us are in a wheelchair. Some of us can't access the built environment. So who are we? Well, that's all the slide we're on right now. Accessibility Partners seeks to serve the 1 in 5 through workfulness in the 4 nations of the UK in order that we can bring equity to the table. Who do we serve? I've not really talked about all of it yet, but we work alongside inclusion, and I've really got to change the font on this PowerPoint presentation. Inclusion is our not-for-profit arm. Inclusion was already labelled something else. It was in a previous iteration, Yell SOS. And Yell SOS sought to, well, I think it sought to rescue people. And that's the opposite of what we do now. So I said, over the 16 years I've done some learning, and I am still deeply in my learning. Deeply. Inclusion is a co-created group who are committed to equity being served. And actually, Inclusion were a group of friends of mine who evolved on a social media app and were also allies of those friends of mine who mainly had disabilities, who were willing to go to the government with me, all 300 and odd signatures of us, to say that access to work after COVID was taking too long to help me go to work. Remember I said that in order to serve for people, I had to first earn money, make money, and serve my own needs. Well, many of us can't. In fact, 26.4% of us rather probably find it more challenging than others. That's kind of the definition of the Disability Act. Well, it is that if something substantially affects us for longer than 6 months on a day-to-day basis, that's a disability, right? And we are probably disabled by it. Certainly society will be disabling us by it. Because some of it's hidden, a bit like this heading that you can see on this slide. Some of it's hidden. Not everybody has a disability that's visible. Not everybody can see everything that's going on. Let's remember, if we have an eating disorder, which, by the way, if you're diagnosed with an eating disorder in America, then you are automatically screened for autism. Just saying. Things are going to change. They're changing already. Not positively, perhaps. But Inclusion is a group of people who came together and said, hang on, it's taking how long for Access to Work to answer you, MJ? Because I got a job. You remember I said that I'd become a social worker, well, a trainee social worker. You're not allowed to say social worker without the word trainee whilst training. Otherwise, you will be thrown out of being a social worker trainee. It's a protected characteristic. It's a professional accreditation. You're not allowed to say you are unless you are. And while you're training, you've got to make sure that you are clearly stating that. And that's the same as an art therapist. You can't actually say you are providing art therapy. You can't do that because you are. That's illegal. You've got to say that you are providing therapeutic art opportunities and that you are a therapeutic artist. If you say you're an art therapist without saying trainee whilst you are, then you're breaking those professional regulations and laws, and you can be called for it. You can have all that pulled back, all of that material. So who am I serving? Well, I'm serving the 1 in 5. And who does Inclusion serve? Well, Inclusion is the 1 in 5. And they serve me and I serve them. And how? Because we co-create opportunities that allow us to access equity. We will, and we're on our way. And how are we doing that? Well, we're here because at the moment, the 1 in 5 are not actually equitably served, but we need to show people how to do that, because it's not that people don't want to. Everybody does. Everybody wants it to be comfortable. Everybody wants everybody to be involved. Let's be honest. The government want all disabled people, if they can, to be bringing taxes in. And so we should, because we have to all access the police and the hospitals. And maybe we even access them more if we have needs. Who knows? But what we do know is that everybody needs to pay for it in order that it can be paid for. And at the moment, it's not being paid for because not everybody's paying for it. And it's too expensive to pay for because it doesn't actually work that well. So we're here to help lift up the 1 in 5 and show how equitable access to service provision can be achieved. And how do we do it? Well, we do it through a number of schemes. And I know that I'm kind of gone from one slide to 3 in 3 seconds, but we do it mainly, but not only, through the Access to Work scheme. And when I say we, accessibility partners provide the Access to Work scheme, but people that come through inclusion can then eventually access that workfulness support. So what is Access to Work? Well, the thing is that Access to Work is, well, it could be a myriad of things. To some people, it's a phone call after an application with a manager who might be able to get somebody to answer much quicker because of who they know, maybe not what they know. It can be a very long process that takes 20 months for somebody to answer when you put the application in on your own in student accommodation in Wales, hoping that somebody's going to come before you just can't cope with what it is you've got to do, including going to the local university and not being able to get out your van because the pavement's so uneven that your tail lift won't drop. And so having to call people from the street to come and help you in order you can get out in the car park, in order you can go into the place, in order you can deliver the hour that you're now getting paid 1/3 of the price for. Because that's what happened to me as a disabled students provider. When I say I was on £23 back in 2001, I was on £30.50 when I left teaching last August for a job that I required 4 more degrees for. I think that's inflation gone wrong. So in 20 years and 4 degrees later, I increased my wage by £7, literally. I'm not sure I was on the same price. So Access to Work is the provision by which we, and I'll tell you what it's about, what it has in it in a minute, by which we make things equal in work. And for those people in inclusion who don't have this access yet, if they are in receipt of welfare benefits, and remember, if we're a sane and empathic society, then we serve all of us because we're all going to be vulnerable at some point. Disability is the only non-discriminating marginalisation factor. You don't grow black. You don't generally become lesbian, although it's not a bad idea. I'm not being funny, but I choose from the world. I think, gender and orientation ambivalence is pretty much coming. But, you don't generally grow. You know pretty much what you are. In fact, people fight the fact that they are what they are. But we're all gonna become disabled unless we die in our sleep. I'm sorry, but I don't know what else to say. But those people on welfare benefits, which we should be providing, and let me say that welfare benefits aren't the be all and end all, have access to something called supported permitted work, but nobody tells them about it. Literally, look it up. Put in a PW1 into the internet and find a form that nobody tells you about. And it'll tell you exactly what supported permitted work does. You just can't find the form. And so those people in inclusion need to know that's available. And that's what we're doing here down south in Devon. It's actually just around the corner from Wales, isn't it? I didn't realise it was quite so near. I should have known that, but I didn't, because my spatial awareness, my sense of self in time and space is challenged, and I'll go on to that maybe another day. It might be another day. But people in inclusion, that's everybody, the 26.4% of people. We're not talking about the people that are in your workplace that haven't disclosed the fact that they are autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, have ADHD, or maybe have a mental health problem, God forbid. We're only just starting to talk about mental health problems because everybody knows that the society we live in is mean that we have to, because we're all involved in this. It's everybody's agenda. Well, so is inclusion, because you will have somebody in your life that has ended up with a reduced capacity to move through the world in the way that they did, given whatever circumstance, be it an eating disorder, be it their age, be it their mobility, be it a sensory limitation. We have a lady who's a client of ours that's just about to become blind. What's great about inclusion is that we have a group of people who are willing to share their experiences and do on a weekly basis. In fact, yesterday, many of them joined me here virtually and in person to share their story, and we got all of it on camera. And a miracle happened yesterday, which I will go on to perhaps another day, or maybe today. So supported permitted work is what we were sharing yesterday. And that was the idea that if somebody is in receipt of welfare benefits, that actually they can do up to 16 hours a week work through a therapeutic provider, a therapeutic work provider. That's not a job therapist or a work therapist, remember? It's a therapeutic provider. Somebody that has somebody that is a, therapeutic provider, right? And I'm just discussing that actually in an assignment I've just failed to meet the criteria for, because maybe I was a little more opinionated than I should have been. So, and I am. I'm very opinionated about who I serve, and I serve the 1 in 5, and those 1 in 5 are those that have disabilities or move into disability. And if we have anything that substantially affects us for longer than 6 months on a day-to-day basis, then we have a disability, whether that's psychological, emotional, physical, or even psychiatric. Okay, that's a disability, and that's a definition. So even pregnancy can be a disability if it substantially affects us for longer than 6 months, which actually isn't that often, because usually at 12 weeks, we're not that substantially affected. We might be affected, but if you're really ill during pregnancy and maybe, postpartum, you have that's after baby comes, you are depressed, which would be a lot of neurodivergent women find the whole birth thing just so overwhelming. It's quite traumatizing. That's just not them. That's lots of people do. You haven't got to be neurodivergent to be traumatized by giving birth, really. It's a thing. It's a chemical switch. It's a thing that happens. It's the hormone change. It's not anybody's fault. It's a happening, just like everything else. Just like in America now, if you take a drink and you're alcoholic, then you're sick and you need to, not drink, right? There's recognition of that. There's not this, oh, well, fix yourself and become somebody that can stand at a bar. That's not it. So it's not your fault. It's not their fault. It's not my fault. So those people, all of us that have disabilities need to know what's available. But so we do that. Now, the thing I had to share yesterday is that everybody's scared. Everybody that came to yesterday is scared. They're scared because the system doesn't work. That's the welfare benefit system, just saying. For those people that think they're feckless, helpless, hapless people taking money that they shouldn't gratuitously, believe me, they're not. And if you think they are, please come and work with me for free, for 3 hours a week, for 6 months, and you won't believe that anymore. Give of yourself and find out, rather than make that judgment. A bit like all these people coming into our country taking our jobs. Yeah, well, maybe you should want to do those jobs. Maybe there'd be people to fill them. But there are challenges with access to work, just so there are challenges with immigration, there are challenges with education, there are challenges with health, there are challenges with work. But what I shared yesterday was the fear of not doing anything is going to be the fear of losing everything. Because between 25 and 28, 24, 25 actually we're moving on to, but 25 and 28, the government have a plan. And that plan is a change. And that change is such a shift in how things are going to be that we're going to see some terrible happenings if we don't help people understand what they can do. And it's my position, my belief, that the position that a disabled person should take is one where they are actively doing something that they can do, something that they love, something they can do, something they can learn, something they can improve at, whilst they're hopefully going to find a way to bring some money in for it. That's that promissory stuff that helps us live in the world, that world that we've all got to take part in because it's got to be paid for. Those 4 nations that need paying for, and that government that needs paying for, those services, that hospital, all those things that we know we use and we are grateful for in the NHS, because my goodness, I wouldn't be here without the NHS. I'd have been dead 20 million times over. It's maybe an exaggeration, but there we go. I've never exaggerated in all my 465 days on earth. Oh, bear with me. I don't know why there's a phone call happening. I'm a bit lost. My phone was ringing. I'm not sure why. So we shared yesterday how these people who live in that what they'd call supported living, they don't. These are supported adults in the community, and maybe we know somebody who might be moving into supported living in the future, now or when we're no longer here. And I have 3 children who are all have their own challenges, but who are living independently in the house that I left them in Scarborough, because I knew they had to become self-sufficient. But if I hadn't left home, nobody would have helped them. There's the irony. Another story for another day. But I shared yesterday how, I don't suppose you could just send Trey an invite, could you? Yeah. Sorry. You see, I told you this invite link was not working today. So yes, I shared yesterday how those people, including myself and everyone else that you know, can see that in between 25 and 28, what's going to happen is that the government have great plans to change things, and they're already happening. So we saw the budget. The budget said that in the budget that disabled people were going to be sanctioned if they weren't looking for workfulness. We are not one of those sanctioning organisations. We do not work for the government. I am not and this is a very difficult one, I am not a work coach. A work coach for universal credit is a person that helps somebody, we think, understand how to move through welfare benefits. And I think somebody's going to be coming along in a minute who's going to come and share their experience, perhaps. We hope so. We're trying to get in. They're blind. Things aren't always accessible. So I explained yesterday how I feel that now is the time to get ready to pivot. Whether that's that we're practicing something, we're at school, we're learning, we're doing some voluntary work. Not ideal, to be honest, to expect people to do something for nothing when we don't ourselves. It's not my ideal scenario, but that is something that helps us build skills. And there's nothing wrong in doing that. But I do question any business that manages to get somebody to wait their tables or wipe their tables or sweep up and doesn't feel that it's quantifiable to give them a wage, actually, because that's a job they'd have to do anyway. So why aren't they paying for it? Particularly if that person comes with somebody to help them. Yeah, honest, like a bog off, a buy one, you get one free. Now you might think that that's a bit hassly, right? You've got somebody who's being supported by somebody to do something. Why is that okay? That's not cost effective. It is when that person becomes independent at it. That's when it's cost effective. When that person's no longer sitting at home eating cake, going to a cafe, just saying. Right? So that's what I was saying yesterday, that actually there's a way for us to work with the government, with these funds, to help people find something that serves their need. And I don't mean working in a plastics bottles factory on a production line necessarily, unless that's your raison d'etre. And the question I asked yesterday was whether anybody thought about being employed or self-employed or a director of a company. And actually, the two directors of inclusion that have been new to the process, both are quite substantially affected by disability. So Ju, who isn't here at the moment, has a progressive MS and is in a residential home for the elderly, and that's the title on the wall. Honestly, I wouldn't say elderly unless he did, and he's 53. He used to run £1 million entities, Booker, Cash and Carry. He was a manager for that and ran budgets of millions, and he's currently in a facility at 53, not with any workfulness, except now he has. And the other director is a young man of 43, who, I don't know why I'm telling you their age, but there we are, they won't mind, of 43, who had never had a job, had gone from school on DLA, disabled living allowance. Nobody had ever offered him anything. Got to 43, didn't even know he was entitled to welfare benefits, been looked after by parents, mum, family, aunties, very, very safely. He was a birth damage, left side hemiplegia, only uses one arm and one foot's very difficult to use, and didn't really know how workfulness was involved with him, but didn't even claim the welfare benefits that he was entitled to. And at 43 now, he's a director of inclusion. He's an administrative assistant for Accessibility Partners and now processes claim forms, talks to people, shares links, joins in with inclusion. And this year is heading the organisation of our event to the British Association of Social Workers, where we are hopefully delivering our lived experience panel there, which is pretty much what we did yesterday in the South. So my question yesterday is, if you are on LinkedIn and other places than LinkedIn is, when are we ever ready for any of this? Well, we're not, but the government are going to make sure we are. So we better get ready now, because there's no point in them coming and then us not knowing what's going on and not nearly knowing what our choices. And then when our choices are limited to none, then having to do what we're told. And that's probably when we're going to end up in the plastics bottle factory. So between now and then, now in 2028, I want people to understand that I think there's a different set of information to understand. And that maybe as disabled people, we've been given one ideology, and maybe as able-bodied people and those that think that mental health and psychological and psychiatric conditions aren't part of disability, then maybe they've been given a different narrative too. And perhaps we're ready to understand the challenges together. And I believe my last 30 years experience has given me the experience, the knowledge, the learning, and the application of that learning to understand what's been going on for people like me. I might not be a social worker yet. I've just failed an assignment. And I'm quite open about the fact that that's happened, because maybe I misinterpreted something slightly, including I didn't actually attach the article I was evaluating to the document. But then again, I'm not being funny. Yeah, she shouldn't have to go and look for 30 articles. But I made a mistake, right? And that's because I sometimes do. And so do all the people that I met yesterday. They made the mistake of believing that their welfare benefits were secure for life. Everybody kept saying to me, well, you know, actually, and they do, and they have done the last 2 years. I've got PIP for life. There is no life, mate. There's no for life. There's no permanently. There's no definitely. There's no definite. And everything we've got is changing, because mostly severely disabled people were under a personal capacity assessment. Now that's being removed. That means that everybody gets treated the same. Great. Inclusion, you'd think, nah, sorry, it's not. What it means is that, unfortunately, those are going to change and people aren't going to know how to navigate that. They're going to end up on universal credit. And as the government said in the budget, those people will be sanctioned unless they're looking for work. The problem is, what's holding us back is the fact that, number one, there aren't any jobs. Number two, employers don't understand access to work. So then when they do and they realise that it's going to cost them more than it already was, it used to be 20% of the first £1,000, or 20% of the first £1,000, £1,000, or the first 20% of the first 10,000. So it's 1,000 or 2,000 at the most. Now it's 20% of the whole lot. However, we do know how that company can get that back too. But Access to Work currently is telling employers, and that's the NHS, large employers, large ones, anything over 50 employees, that they've got to pay 20%. Now, if somebody's got a £66,000 budget, deaf-blind psychologist I had, she capped her budget. She had an assistant that needed to be a deaf-blind interpreter. She was a deaf-blind psychologist. Interpreting deaf-blind psychology to people that are deaf and blind is quite a specialist subject. And so it did cost me over £66,000 a year, actually, for her to be provided for, to provide that service for deaf-blind participants. And that means that what's holding us back is the fact that the government are charging employers, but that's because they want to spread the cost. They want to give it back to us. They want to give it back to the commercial. Now, I understand why, because actually they've been creaming off the top, taking it from everyone, providing for only the privileged few. So what's holding me back is obviously a lack of inclusion. But what else is holding me back is the system by which they have provided that inclusion and the Access to Work system. So the other thing that's holding everybody back, the elephant in the room, is the fact that everybody that's disabled is terrified that their benefits are going to be taken off them. But what's going to happen is they're going to be taken off them anyway, and then they're going to have to get scared. Not all of them, but most of them. And that should bring enough money in, they reckon, in the squabble to get them to do something, an equal society. Well, it won't. What we need to do is be honest about it. So what's first is an application, or what's first is to come to one of our inclusion events, because if you know somebody that's disabled, or they might feel that they have a need to change what they're doing, or their benefits aren't going to last, or they don't think that they're secure, or they don't know how to get any of this help, then inclusion's the place they need to be. Why? Because they're with like-minded individuals who care, and they care enough to share their experience. And our lived experience is the only experience that actually is valid to us, our own lived experience, isn't it? So that's first. First is, if you don't know, come to inclusion. We're on a Monday night. On a Monday morning, we're in MJ's house on Clubhouse, because Clubhouse is where I began. And in fact, I was talking about where I began yesterday. I think it was very good. And that footage will be released very soon. I've got somebody editing it, I would imagine, as we speak. Unless he's left his cable, because I think he's a bit like me. I lost my room key 8 times yesterday. That's being edited. And so what's first is inclusion. Monday night, 7 o'clock, we're on Clubhouse. On a Monday morning at 6 o'clock, we're in MJ's house, because I opened a house. Clubhouse made me, kind of what happened as it evolved. There's quite a few thousand people following that house, and so they go on replays, and then they make comments to me on the back channel and by email, and then they delete themselves from the viewing list, which I find fascinating. So what's first, I think, is to let go of the shame of the fact that disability is okay and that inclusion is just a thing, and that saying something's person-centered are just words. But when we treat people respectfully and we believe they're entitled to come and sit at the table with us, then what's first is recognizing that everybody needs to be served. So what's first is that. It's looking at our own internal bias and maybe discovering what we think about that and what we're doing. And if we're in business, then are we serving everybody? And if we're not, why not? And if you don't know how, come see me, because it isn't just about having a talk to your employees and making yourself feel better, although that's useful. So what's first is accepting that inclusion is a given, understanding that everyone's entitled to the table, but belonging in business is about everybody. Our mental health crisis is exponential. Our psychological services are under such duress that they're actually just lip service, most of them. CBT is great, but only for particular things like stopping smoking. It's not a catch-all. We posited as that because CBT therapists were very good at recording. They recorded their therapy and then we recorded them giving their therapy and then we used that as our research. But actually, we all act better when somebody else is watching. Yeah? Accountability. So CBT therapy analysis is rubbish. It's not true. Those statistics are skewed because the people within them were being videoed and the ones that were doing it were showing how good they were in their skill set whilst they were being watched. They were being the best version of themselves. That's not how CBT is carried out everywhere all of the time. So those statistics aren't true. You know, they say there are stats, or they also say there are lies, damn lies, and then there are statistics. So that's what we've got. The whole of our mental health is governed on our CBT mechanism, actually. IAPT, improving access to psychological therapies, starts with CBT. I'm not sure that people go to IAPT because they need to stop smoking. I'm sure they do, but I'm not sure why they're at. That's why they're at IAPT. Now, they say there's a level and that people go through it, but often they just go round and round and round and round and round and round in circles. And this is why people are frightened of lifting their head above the parapet and coming off welfare benefits or even asking for workfulness. So the first thing we need is education, education, education. And we need that to be for employers, employees, and for everybody. And particularly for people who are serving people. And I serve people. So I'm asking you this morning who you're serving. It's great to see such an interesting audience when everybody here that would have been here or should have been here doesn't appear to be here, and I'm not sure why. It's very interesting that I didn't share the link, so I didn't direct people. And I wonder whether, what's first is to help people get attention. And I think we have so much to be attentive to, don't we? Our families, our loved ones, our work, our school, our potential, are we succeeding, all of that, our desire to attain. And actually, what do I want to do? I want to attain my own equilibrium. I think most people do. There's some challenges through the Access to Work programme. I'm not going to go into it today, but if you're interested in understanding inclusion, please join with us on a Monday night. DM me on the back channel if you are involved in an organisation that needs inclusion as the backbone to their society, as their organisation, then call me, because I'm not sure that current provision really helps shape culture. It maybe intimates at what culture should nod towards, but I'm not sure it gets into the foray and really looks at the shame and denial that we all feel about not being good enough. And I think that's what inclusion's about. It's about including ourselves. I certainly didn't include myself. I excommunicated myself. I actually became a version of what somebody else wanted me to be. I kept aspiring to be something, a teacher. My mum was one I didn't want to be, but I did. I love teaching. I just didn't like being a teacher. A psychotherapist, I love being in therapy, and therapy was the best thing that ever happened to me. I had 18 years of it in therapy. That's how much the NHS paid for me to not be mad. But I didn't enjoy being a therapist. I don't enjoy being a therapist. I don't enjoy the parameters by which I am shackled. I'm learning to be a social worker. I don't enjoy that. I don't want to be a social worker. I don't like social workers. I'm not keen on how and what and who they move through the world as, because I don't think they're being them. And I think those systems, again, shackle me, Now, I do think we all need parameters, and I think access to work has parameters, but if those parameters were navigatable by a normal human with understanding, that's fine, but they're not. It's not a great process. Like, I'm not having a go here. I did yesterday, but they were access to work do some horrendous things because nobody understands how to organise it. I don't know. There's lots of problems with it. Massive holes, massive. But navigating it on your own is mad. It's at the moment, it's just not doable. And I don't know how people, I do know, it's hit and miss. When people come to us, they've managed to get sometimes £36,000 worth of taxis and nothing else. But then they can't book a taxi because wheelchair accessible vehicles aren't bookable at the time you've got to go to work. What? So somebody has to apply some logic to this inclusion process. And I'm afraid that case managers and access to work don't know how to do it. And as disabled people, we're not taught how to. And those that haven't worked aren't even encouraged to. Given that disability is acquired and then suddenly we can be, we have a gentleman who's just had his neck broken, got it stood on in a lacrosse match, I think it was. So he's tetraplegic. You become tetraplegic, actually, you've got a bit to learn. So it can happen anytime, but if we were all prepared as children for the fact that this can happen to anyone, and then when we see somebody that looks funny, saw something on LinkedIn, oh, Daddy, that boy says you look funny. That's not very kind, is it? Said one young man. That's a normal thing for me to happen all the time. I stop with children, explain what a wheelchair is, talk about a pushchair, but it's exhausting to do that all the time. The preparation begins now, and it begins as children are born, and that we talk about everybody and not aspire to be something that not everybody is. In fact, not very many people are. In fact, I'm not sure who is. So the preparation begins now, because by 2028, there won't be anything like we've got now. And this slide doesn't give itself credence, although it has an important part, that this is a new way of thinking. And the new way of thinking actually has already been there for a long time. It's crazy. But in the learning disability world, in the learning world of my disabled colleagues, the idea that we eat right, move right, think right, sleep right. I got a sleep score of 100% the other day, just saying. Poop right and drink right. And I'm reading those because I couldn't be bothered to think of them. And that was on my presentation yesterday, is actually revolutionary in the field that I work in, because we just don't talk about the basics. We talk about the lived experience. We talk about the lifts. We talk about the care plans. We talk about the drugs. We talk about the drug charts. We talk about the injections. We talk about all of that, but we don't talk about the basic needs of the human being to be healthy. We don't even make any guesstimates or assumptions about it. We just go, oh, they're disabled, so we have to drug them, actually. I was on 26 different medications when I started to learn about personal development, and people might go, what do you mean? You had loads of degrees. How did you not learn about personal development? Well, I'm autistic. I'm neurodivergent. I had my children. I raised them. I got my head down. I learned a career. I made that career pay the way and get us to the point where we survived, because I live in survival mode. I had trauma also as a child, but I was already traumatized. I was born in fight or flight. But I've lived that life, and I'm not living it anymore. But I'm going to help people to understand how they can live that best life through access to work and individual. And I'm going to be quick now because I haven't let anybody talk. We've only got 10 minutes, but that's fine. Sometimes it works that way. I might have a little bit to say. Individuals, as I said and alluded to, you can have a bug off. So if you've got somebody with disabilities, they come with a bug off. They do. You buy one, you get one free. Not all the time and not every time and not at a good, decent hourly rate, although we're working on that. We don't pay beneath £15 an hour for our support workers. We don't, and we won't. And I want to lift that to 20. But the way access to work are working, they're going to bring it down to 12. And if the people that do it on their own have anything to do with it, it will be at 12. And that's not really acceptable for anybody, particularly if somebody's driving somebody and working with somebody as a disabled person and they are caring for their needs at work, like hoisting them, etc. That's a complicated job, particularly when you've got somebody you've got to help them with their workfulness, and maybe they're, I don't know, a deafblind psychologist in a wheelchair, for example. So support workers available in that 66 grand. Travel is available. That's taxes, you can't get them. because no wheelchair accessible vehicle is available at those times. Just saying to all the wheelchair accessible vehicles out there, what are you doing? Get out there between 8 and 9. Please provide a service. If you've got a WAV, use it. And I think if you're registered as a Hackney carriage, you should be obliged to be working at school times and work times with a WAV. That's what I think. I think some commitment to providing these things needs to be given by somebody, and I intend to make that happen. So travel is possible, as is, if your travel is more than your taxes, the idea of some form of provision of a vehicle. Your strategy coaching, which is what we provide, I'm saying don't do it on your own. We used to be allowed quite a lot. We're not anymore. They've cut it down to 1 a month. You're allowed to speak with me or a colleague of mine once a month. That's not what happens. I promise you. That's really not what happens. It's not how it could happen. But that's what they reckon strategy coaching can manage. 1 hour a month, over a month, once a month for 12 months. And maybe they'll repeat it the next year if we can really justify it. So we've been cut right down to the quick. We knew it was coming. But I needed to build something that could manage that change, and we have. And I believe that coaching facilitates change, even if you are already pretty much changed in lots of ways. I started accessing coaching. I used to think coaching was second rate. Okay, I did. When I was taught about psychotherapy, I was taught that the coaching model was actually just, not taught it, but that was the opinion. Then when I started studying it and did my own coaching module at master's level, I realized that actually coaching is an art, just the same as teaching, and therapy is also an art, but it comes from some pretty stringent methodologies and modalities. And I'm an integrative therapist. I've never identified as one or another, or Gestalt or otherwise, or CBT or whatever. I'm an integrative therapist, and the reason for that is because coaching facilitates change. And to be stuck in those parameters of as I said earlier, means to be shackled. Coaching releases me from that shackle, and it's what I called lifespan planning. And you can see a quick run through that on this slide. I will go into that another day. But what I designed in lifespan planning was the integrative factor of all of the things that I'd learned, which is pretty much any coach, is I am the sum total of everything I've learned, and I will help you get from A to B, from here to there, through the things that I've learned, the people I know, the connections I have, and the modalities I've experienced, in order to pass on the way that I managed to get there. And whilst concurrently recognizing that you need to honor you inside you, and becoming your own parent, in my opinion, is probably the best way of us moving through the world, and that being that by unconditionally, positively regarding ourselves and loving the fact that it's always time for change. Whatever stays the same, 85% of what we do is from yesterday. We do what we did yesterday 85% of the time, says Joe Dispenza. Not me, believe you, not me. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was just a repeated record. I didn't know that I was just doing the same old, whether it worked or it didn't. But then I realized through the art of coaching that I did have the power to change my mind, to change my mindset. But more than that, I realized that for me, the head and hands and heart of social work is that what I learn in my head, I move to my heart, and I deliver through my hands, because that's what social work is. It's a doing thing. It's a verb. Social work is a verb. It's a doing thing. So I'm doing social work. I might not be passing social work this time round. I might be redoing that assignment again and again. It's okay. I can do each one of them 3 times to ascribe to their parameters. Absolutely fine. But the doing, right? The doing I'm already doing. So if I'm getting the accreditation for the thing I'm already doing, but I'm not quite there yet, that's okay. That's called learning. That's what we're going to teach these people. That's what we're going to teach you. That's what we're going to teach everybody. If you'd like us to come along and do that, I have to say we're a bloody good laugh, and we're a damn good show. We absolutely are. And I think the footage is going to evidence that. I have to say I had great fun. And if that's what work is, give it me. I'll do that all day long, every day of the week, to as many people as you want to bring. Because I think that's the time for change, when we can en masse help each other. I'd like to do that through the art of the television, because I think everybody watches the bloody television. I'm in a hotel room now, and I swear to you, the television is as big as the room. I can't believe it. It's like having a movie. I don't understand it. I don't understand why somebody has a screen like that. Is that our new God? I'm just saying, it literally dominates this room to the extent I can't believe it. So I'm going to start using the television, because everybody watches it, and that's how we teach people. You know, if you've ever heard of EastEnderism, it's where now we know that in psychology and in psychotherapy, people come and they want their life to reflect EastEnders, or their life begins to reflect EastEnders because they get tied up in the drama. Well, I think it's time for a change, in that we need to get back to basics, help people crunch the numbers, understand what it is that helps them be healthful. I've got to say, I'm a bit of a health freak right now, and I love the fact I am. And I'm quite happy to share that, and that's what I'm doing. I'm learning, I'm practicing on me. And we've got to start disabled people helping themselves to practice on themselves, to see if there's a different tomorrow to the story they've been told, or the narrative that they hold, or the one that parents have only been told that they might have, because that's where it begins, right? So let's begin at school. Let's share this story. Let's make sure this footage gets out there. Let's make sure that this story is told again and again and again. If you have a business, make sure you're providing for everyone. If you're not, get me in and I'll show you how. And I'll show you the most cost-effective way of showing you how, through government services that will help you get your brownie points and serve need and be a right public servant and do the right thing. So we're going to close it in a moment. We're only 5 minutes away. I want to say thank you to everyone that's here. You are obviously welcome to come up. I'm going to have my breakfast in 5 minutes, but I do believe it's time for change. I've changed. I've changed in the point that actually I share exactly what I'm going through. And I did that because I realized that this front face pretending glossy stuff doesn't wash. It didn't wash with me. It doesn't wash with other people. And actually people laugh about it. And I don't want that. And I'd rather they laughed about me being who I am than laughed about me being something that I thought they wanted me to be, but I didn't really do very well at, actually. Because I can stand in my own hallelujah, because I am who I am. I can't change. That's a song somewhere. I can't change that. I can only change how I am. And I'm doing that every day. So you can laugh if you want. That's okay. At least I am. So we only have a couple of minutes, but I want to say thank you for being here, for listening, for turning up, for being you, and for being somebody who I would determine as another soul on a life mission to become. I think we are all wanting to become. I think we all have the opportunity, or we should have the opportunity to become, and many of us don't. And I make steps, very small steps, in assisting others that might not have those opportunities that I've been given, or that the ones I know about. And even if I don't do it perfectly all of the time ever, what I do is what I can do when I can, with the knowledge I have and the understanding I have right now. And I just keep learning. I can't do any more, and I won't do any less. And I believe that inclusion is a given, but I believe that disabled people, now or those in the future, need to know how to be disabled and how to foster inclusion. And everybody has to become their own best parent, with the help of others. I don't think we should go alone. I think we go further together. And I think if we go further together with people that have gone through it and understand some of it, even if the process is not perfect, then it's better than us doing it on our own again and again and again and again and again, a bit like these assignments. And just as an aside, actually, it's quite an important point. DSA, that provider that I used to be, but I no longer am, I can't get an ASD tutor, that's an autistic spectrum disorder tutor, for me, even though I'm entitled to one, to help me circumnavigate their language and their subjective experiencing and my subjective experiencing of their questions, which are usually very woolly, because I'm quite literal. I like to call her, say how it is. And I don't get that, because there aren't enough of them, because they've devalued it so much that there aren't any available. So I've gone through this degree, nearly 2/3 of it, without the help that I'm entitled to, given the conditions I've got. And I'm a tutor that provided it, and I can't find one, because there aren't any. That's going to happen in work if we don't watch out, and if we don't start playing the game, if we don't start joining in, if we don't start realizing that everybody is important. And if you've got a family member that is, then, So I'm going to get through this degree, whether or not the provision's there, just like I started my business, whether or not access to work was there. And I'm going to get people through, whether or not access to work turn up before they get work, when they've got work, or even before they die. I'll be honest, that's happening. That it takes so long for them to turn up. People have passed away before they get there. So I think it's time for change. And I'm working in all sorts of arenas. And if you know me, go look on social media. It's not just here I'm doing this. I'm talking my talk and I'm walking my walk. I'm helping the narrative change by being the narrative that changes. Maybe you could change yours. I hope so. I love you all very much, and I'm very grateful you're here. I'm going to end this now and say that we talked for an hour. Happy Saturday. Have a great weekend. I'm going to relax today. I know nobody believes me, but it's true. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.